All right, thanks so much for joining us again. We have our afternoon session of our first ever Census GeoForum. The first part of our session will be on geographic partnership programs, and we'll begin with Michael Arthur. Mike Arthur is a geographer at the U.S. Census Bureau with extensive experience in geographic programs, geospatial data products, and supporting the development and dissemination of census geographic data. We will then talk about the Geography Division Partner Portal with Michael Riedman. Michael Riedman is a geographer at the U.S. Census Bureau who focuses on fostering tribal, state, and local partnerships. And we'll finish our initial partnership session with talking about the Geographic Update Partnership Software, or GUPS, which will be done by Maria Panachon-Tueve. And Maria Panachon-Tueve is a geographer at the U.S. Census Bureau who focuses on outreach for the geographic partnership programs and support project management for GUPS Web. Go ahead, Mike Arthur. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Arthur, a geographer with the U.S. Census Bureau Geography Division. Thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to sharing an overview of our geographic partnership programs and the important role that they play. This afternoon, I'll be covering the data lifecycle, geographic partnership programs, including the Boundary Annexation Survey, School District Review Program, local update of the census addresses, the New Construction Program, Participant Statistical Area Program, and the American Indian and Alaska Native programs. Then my colleagues will provide the latest update on our geographic applications. From congressional districts to census blocks, to incorporated places to addresses, the Census Bureau tabulates data for a wide variety of geographic entities of all shapes and sizes. The Census Bureau maintains and updates nationwide geographic data sets that support legal, statistical, and administrative boundary data, as well as address information. Legal and administrative boundaries are defined through official documentation such as treaties, charters, and ordinances that are updated annually and include counties, incorporated places, and minor civil divisions. Statistical boundaries are developed to support data analysis and reporting, including census tracts, block groups, census blocks, census designated places, with an emphasis on maintaining consistency for data comparison over time. The Census Bureau maintains more than 148 million addresses from 50 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and island areas. These addresses are the foundation of essential Census Bureau programs. Geography is constantly evolving, and partnership programs begin with partnership governments reviewing census data. The data lifecycle of partnership programs are made of partners reviewing census products, those same partners providing updates, then the Census Bureau reviewing those updates and updating them in the geographic database, and then creating update data sets and products. Next, we'll turn our attention to the geographic partnership programs. The Boundary Annexation Survey, or BAS, is our program that targets legal geographies such as county, incorporated place boundaries. BAS is an annual opportunity for tribal, state, and general purpose local governments to submit boundary changes, legal changes like annexations, as well as spatial adjustments to our data, name description changes, or changes to legal status such as new incorporation, mergers, or consolidations. Through BAS, we also offer our partners the opportunity to update census designated places, or CDPs, boundaries, and our road data. Participating in BAS allows governments to confirm that all legal boundaries in our database are current and accurate. These updates contribute to estimating the housing and population counts within a government and serve as a foundation for good decision making for tribal, state, and general purpose local governments. More importantly, BAS ensures communities receive and share more than $2.8 trillion allocated annually for health, welfare, infrastructure, education, and other federal programs. I'll highlight 3 important dates for BAS. January 1, the annual BAS kicks off shortly after January 1 each year. Boundary updates provided through BAS each cycle must be in effect on or before January 1 to be reported to the current survey year. March 1, legal boundary updates, or those boundary changes made through a legal act such as annexation submitted by March 1, are reflected in the American Community Survey, the Population Estimate Program data, and in next year's BAS materials. May 31, legal boundary updates submitted by May 31 will be reflected in next year's BAS materials. Spatial adjustments or boundary corrections will be updated as time permits. The School District Review Program, also known as SDRP, is a U.S. Department of Education National Center for Education statistical sponsored program conducted annually by the Census Bureau, where we update unified, elementary, secondary, and school district administrative areas, which are found in Vermont only. Updated school district boundary information submitted through SDRP is used by the Small Area Income and Poverty Estimates Program, also known as SAPE, informing the Census Bureau's estimates of the number of children aged 5 through 17 and families in poverty for each school district. These estimates are the basis for the distribution of $18 billion in Title I funds. School district boundaries are also used to develop estimates of social, economic, demographic, and housing conditions for the American Community Survey, and they will provide essential geographic information to help education program administrators and research investigative location-based questions. The 2030 Census Local Update of Census Addresses, also known as LUCA, is an opportunity for officials of tribal, state, and general purpose local governments to engage with the 2030 census by reviewing and commenting on the Census Bureau's address list prior to the 2030 census. The Census Bureau depends on a complete and accurate address list to ensure it can identify, reach every living quarter and its associated population for inclusive and the decennial census. LUCA provides an opportunity for governments to participate in reviewing their address list. A LUCA review starts with governments reviewing their address count by tabulation block and compare the total to their own address list to determine if any differences exist. Governments may find the address count meets expectations and no further review may be necessary. Governments who agree to protect the Census Bureau's address data will then receive data for their jurisdiction. Governments will have the option to provide suggestions to add missing addresses and/or delete addresses that do not exist, in addition to update the geographic location of addresses. LUCA prep is currently going on right now, and the LUCA participant review will start in May of 2027. The purpose of the new construction program is to assure the Census Bureau's address list is complete and accurate. The new construction program includes 4 phases. The first phase is the new construction program invitation phase. Next is the new construction program participant review materials. Then the new construction program address updates. And finally, the closeout phase. The Census Bureau conducts LUCA and new construction on a consecutive partnership operation to assure the Census Bureau's address list is complete and accurate. Participating in LUCA is not a requirement for participating in new construction, and partners can choose to participate in either one or both programs. The Participant Statistical Areas Program, also known as PSAP, is a program that targets statistical geography, including tracts, block groups, census county divisions, and census designated places. Statistically geography updated during PSAP has 2 primary high-level purposes: stability for time series data comparisons, traditionally between decennial censuses, but the American Community Survey data users have stated that they should stay stable for at least 5 years for them to remain relevant. The second purpose is for statistical data quality and reliability. Minimum and optimal thresholds are used to help ensure this purpose. Also, local input helps ensure statistical geographic areas represent locally meaningful geographic areas, for example, the relationship to neighborhoods. The 2030 Census PSAP enables invited participants to review and update statistical area boundaries such as census tracts, block groups for the 2030 data tabulation. Participants follow Census Bureau guidelines and criteria to update these geographies. The Census Bureau uses defined statistical areas to tabulate data for the 2030 Census American Community Survey, the economic census, and other censuses and surveys. More information will be released on the 2030 PSAP in the next year or two. The Census Bureau has two main programs designated to collect and maintain American Indian areas: the Boundary Annexation Survey and the Participant Statistical Area Program. BASS provides tribes annual opportunity to review and update legal geography, names, roads, and create and maintain subdivisions. BASS includes federally recognized reservations, federally recognized trust lands, tribal subdivisions, census-designated places, and Hawaiian homelands. PSAP is a voluntary geographic partnership program that provides an opportunity for tribal governments to review and suggest changes to the boundaries and names for statistical areas using specific criteria and guidelines. In short, it is a platform for federally and state recognized tribes to create, update statistical areas to get data the legal areas may not cover in preparation for the decennial census. The Census Bureau uses these geographies to tabulate and disseminate data for decennial census, economic census, and the annual American Community Survey. This timeline displays our main geographic partnership programs. You can see that partner involvement increases from 2026 until the decennial census is conducted in 2030. BASS and SDRP will continue to operate annually through 2030. The LUCA program kicks off in 2027 and will run throughout parts of 2027, 2028, and 2029. New construction will also occur during 2029. PSAP begins in 2029 with a verification phase occurring the following year in 2030. Detailed schedules for current programs and some of their upcoming programs can be found on the respective program websites. To learn more about how tribal, state, and local governments participate in geography partnership programs and how that participation benefits your community, please visit our Geographic Partnership webpage or scan the QR code. On this website, you'll find links to the American Indian and Alaska Native programs, BASS, LUCA, and PSAP. And now, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Michael Riedman.
Great job, Mike. Can you just give me a thumbs up to show that you can hear me? Alrighty. So that was a great overview of geographic partnership programs from my coworker, Mike Arthur. And now I'm going to talk about the Geography Division Partner Portal, what we call the Future of Partnerships, which is a way to participate in geographic partnership programs. And just out of curiosity, could you give a thumbs up or one of the symbols if you've participated in a geographic partnership program before? And hopefully we have a few of our participants in here, but I'm going to start talking about the Geography Division Partner Portal. So this is a new online web application that we are currently developing, designed specifically for participants of geographic partnership programs. It's a centralized information hub that provides access to Census Bureau geographic and statistical data. It provides an avenue to respond to program invitations. It allows you to look at your historical participation for your entity that you're associated with. It allows you to correspond with folks like Mike or myself, Census Bureau geographers, and it also allows you to go in there and update, add, or edit your contact information. And most importantly, it keeps our partners informed with what's going on with geographic partnership programs. So currently, geography partnership program or geographic partnership program information is found throughout census.gov. And we're really trying to simplify this into a singular interface in which our partners can just go to one website, get all the information that they need and see the status of their program and kind of a one-stop shop, if you will. So just like I was saying, the partner portal will provide a one-stop shop location for all needs from learning about programs to completing your submission. From the start to the finish, the partner portal is there to help you. And we're always looking for ways to minimize the burden of participation in our geographic partnership program. So we're looking at this year to year and also decade to decade. And the goal of the partner portal is really to streamline the partner's experience. So now we're going to take a live look at the Geography Division Partner Portal. I just want to say that this is currently in development, so there might be a thing or two that pops out or catches your eye or some testing information or whatnot, but it's in development, but we're feeling really great about it, and my team, the government engagement branch, has been working tirelessly to get this thing up and running. So now you should be able to see the Geography Division Partner Portal on your screens. So this is the home page. Right now this is private, so this URL won't work publicly, but it's eventually you'll just go to partnerportal.geo.census.gov and you'll arrive here at this main home page. Now on the home page, there's a number of things to look at, a number of points of interest, if you will. We have a welcome video that kind of gives you an overview of what's going on in the portal. We have a new update section. So for example, we can see this, oh, hello GeoForum. And it says, hello GeoForum and welcome to the portal. And so this is just where you'll find information about programs that are coming up or kind of any information that we think is super relevant. And then also we have frequently asked questions. These are also drop-down menus, so you can click and access, the FAQs and see what kind of information you can find. Then we also have at the top here a form that allows us to submit an email or contact us. So for example, I can say test@test.com, go down, enter in the email, all the pertinent information. And then this is one of the great features. Instead of having to have our email addresses, you can just choose the specific program or just a general inquiry and send us off a message. And this is all before we've even logged into the portal. You also have the option to do dark mode or light mode. And but let's get into the portal. So I'm just going to drag this window off to the side real quick and enter in my credentials. Sometimes I have to activate make it so you can see the password, just so I know I'm entering the right one. So give me 1 second here. All right, so the password worked and we're in action. So basically, once you log in, you get to see any entity that you're associated with. So when I've been testing, I've been pretending that I am associated with either Mule Barn Town or the entity that you see here below. But I'm going to click on Mule Barn Town because that's what we're using for our demonstration today. So what you're looking at now is what we call the entity overview page. And the entity overview page is made up of kind of 4 key sections. Well, actually 5, because we'll look at the top right here. So at the top, this is called the entity overview header. Entity overview page, so the entity overview header is at the top. And basically, this just tells you some information about the entity you're associated with. So we have an entity ID. This shows the BAS ID, but currently BAS ID is changing over to Gov ID. So by the time this goes live, you'll see the Gov ID here. Your national standards codes, which is the closest census regional office, and then what your FIPS code is. That's your Federal Information Processing Standards code. And if you want to pop this up or pop it down, you can just click on the icon here and it will do that. So then basically you have these 4 key sections here: the communication summary, contact section, geographic partnership programs overview section, and important announcements and reminders. Excuse me. So basically you'll be able to communicate with Census Bureau staff from directly inside the portal. And so you can click on this and it'll look a lot like, you know, an inbox, you know, like your email or whatnot. You can create a new message. You can choose which program or general that you want to send it to. You can, you know, say this is important or not important, and then you can go ahead, type in the message that you want to send, and then that will start a message thread back and forth between you and who you're trying to get in contact with. Another great function that you have here is contacts. So basically, we have a database that has all of our contacts in it, and this will allow you to either add a new contact, and when you submit that, that gets automatically pushed into our database, and you know, so we'll be able to contact with you. But when you're entering your information here, another great feature is that you can designate, you know, I'm the BAS contact for the Boundary and Annexation Survey, or for example, I'm the highest elected official of my entity or whatnot. So this information is great for us, and when we're mailing out for our programs and sending out program invitations, this really helps us target the right people. So you'll be able to come in here and make sure that the contacts listed for your entity are indeed correct, and if not, you'll be able to edit them and push those changes over to us. All right, moving on down the page here, we have important announcements and reminders, and basically on our side of it, Geography Division and Census Bureau staff are able to push out important announcements and reminders either to every single entity. I believe it's about 40,000 entities. So we could push out an important reminder to everyone, or we could do it only to a specific entity. So that would be great. You know, we can say the BAS program is starting soon, or we're approaching the May deadline. Make sure you get your response in. Or like I did today, I knew that I was going to be demoing Mule Barn Town, so I just specifically went to this entity and I said, hello, GeoForum, we hope you're having a great time. All right, so then we're going to keep it moving and look at the Geographic Partnership Program overview. And just at first glance, we can see that Mule Barn Town, that's our entity, for the BAS program has responded with no changes. And Mule Barn Town, for the School District Review Program, we've received their submission. So this is great if you're wondering what's going on with your submission or whatnot. You can just look here and get some quick information. But just like the 2 other sections, you can click the title and you'll go even deeper. So this shows kind of a generic overview for your specific entity about geographic partnership programs, but then you'll also be able to select the individual partnership program. So I'm going to click on BAS, which is the Boundary and Annexation Survey, and just give it a second to load here. But what you'll find is that it has basically all of the information, all of the generic information that you would find on our normal census.gov public facing website. All that information is contained here, but you'll also find entity specific information. And it's just give it a second longer for loading. Of course, it takes a little bit longer to load during the live demonstration. But while that's loading, you'll be able to find, you know, some great specific, or there's both general information, but there's also entity specific information. And that entity specific information includes stuff like the schedule, you know, the BAS schedule, or excuse me, the entity specific information includes stuff like the historical response info, the specific shape files that you want to download, or the specific BAS maps. And I'm just going to refresh this here and just backtrack a little bit and give it one more try. bear with me for a second here. And I got one more trick up my sleeve if we run into any more issues, but it's great because you can find, specific information that's, applicable to your specific entity. So I'm going to scroll down here. We see this general information. We see some helpful links, right? But then, maybe we want to know, okay, I'm new to working at Mule Barn Town, and I don't really know what's been going on with bass in the past. So I can scroll over here and I can go to bass participation and response information, or even keep on moving. I think this is the one I want to click. Is the bass current and historical response information. So I can see 2025, we responded with no changes, but who was working there before me? Okay, 2024, they also responded with no changes. And then in 2023 and 2022, there was no response at all. So I'm going to bounce back over to the main page here. And for example, something that is also super helpful in my mind is you can get a bass map specific for your entity. You can just click real quick here and it will bring up your bass map so you can do a quick, is this the correct boundaries, or does it look like, maybe we had an annexation or a de-annexation or a boundary change. So I can look at this real quick and that can help guide my response to the bass program. And then also we have, just some generic links or generic information that you can throw in here to help aid the response. But the goal is that all this information, instead of being scattered on, multiple sites, is in one centralized location that that is easy to access and streamlines the experience. So there's a lot to look forward for the Geography Division Partner Portal. I think there's just one last thing I wanted to show you here. Earlier Mike showed you in his presentation, a snapshot of the bass schedule. You're also able to access the bass schedule here. And what's fun about this is it's just a little bit more interactive. You can scroll your mouse over the different points throughout the year and see the key deadlines and what's coming up. And we see that, May 31st is the final deadline. So if you are working on the bass, you got a couple days left to get your response in. All right, and I'm just going to bounce back over to the presentation just for a few final slides. So looking ahead, as I've mentioned numerous times, the partner portal is currently in the development phase. We're currently working hard, testing it, and also creating tutorials for our users and our partners, which will be you one day. And as 2030 approaches, geographic partnership programs will begin utilizing the GDPP. And I think first we're looking at BAS 27, probably March of 2027, we'll open it up to do a little bit of testing for those participants. So stay tuned if you're a BAS participant and want to do some testing of the partner portal. And then just kind of key takeaways, or in summary, throughout the decade, and provide an opportunity for partners to update the Census Bureau's boundary and address data. And then the Geography Division Partner Portal is an online application that will streamline participation in geographic partnership programs. And now I would like to turn things over to our coworker, Maria.
All right, thank you, Mike. Okay. Right now I'm going to share more with you about the Geographic Update Partnership software, also known as GUPS. My colleagues just shared information about what the different geographic partner programs are and where partners can learn more and communicate in the partner portal. GUPS is the tool where updates are made for several of our partner programs. Okay. GUPS is a geographic update software that is developed specifically for geography partner program use. We've been using GUPS since 2015 when it was developed to be a standalone application as a plugin for QGIS. It is a no-cost software for our local government partners who use it to update geospatial data, including addresses, features, legal boundaries, statistical boundaries, and administrative boundaries, as well as well as attributes associated with those geospatial features. It's built using open source software, which has many benefits for both the census and local government users, including customizable program interfaces and tools, as well as cost savings. Wanting to progress further into newer technology and make GUPS more user-friendly, we built a new version of GUPS as a web application. Just like the standalone version that's built on QGIS, GUPS Web is also built on open source software. This new system is designed to support the geographic update needs of our geographic partner programs. It is a cloud-native containerized application and was released to participants in the 2024 Boundary and Annexation Survey. We're planning to have this application support 12 of our geographic partner programs by 2030, and we've already launched it to support BASS and recently launched the version that supports phase 1 of the redistricting data program. So there are many benefits of GUPS Web to our partners. First, it provides real-time collaboration with program participants on submissions. So this means that several users can be in the same project at the same time. This is really helpful for several of our partner programs that have a pretty large scope of work, including the local update of census addresses and the BBSP program. Second, there is no required download of software or materials. All of the materials are available online. This is really advantageous for our users because it's time saving. So you no longer have to download QGIS and then download the plugin, install the plugin, like our previous version of GUPS. So now you can just log in to the GUPS website, access everything you need there. All the help information is also available on that website. And all you need is just an internet connection. So this helps bypass issues that we've had in the past where users had to deal with firewalls or security on their work computers. So this is generally very time-saving and less painful. Third, there's more processing power. So our application scales up or down based on user load or processing load. The production version of GUPS Web moves very quickly. And in general, since it's all in the cloud, all online, users are able to get the work done in a timely manner. There's utilization of automated spatial analysis tools. So when a user has their own data that they want to use for whatever program they're in, so whether it's addresses or legal boundaries, we've built tools in GUPS Web that can analyze the local data, compare it to the census data, and point out areas of difference. So in my demo today, I'll show you the Boundary and Annexation Survey automated spatial analysis tools where it creates these areas of difference for review. And then likewise, when we have our address programs ready, it will also point out, it will flag addresses and describe how they compare with current census data. And related, we have multiple editing methods for creating updates. So for example, with the boundary update programs, participants can choose between automated or manual change creation. So I just described the automated changes. For participants that don't have their own local data to upload into GUPS Web, they can create changes manually. So that works very similar to drawing changes on a map. Like if you were used to using paper map method for participating in the Boundary and Annexation Survey, this is a really good alternative where on GUPS Web, you can just view the census data and draw in those annexations or areas of change as needed. So I will also demonstrate that today. Okay, and then this slide is showing you the GUPS Web release timeline. So in 2024 and 2025, we rolled out GUPS Web for the boundary and annexation survey, and that has been a success. We've gotten very good feedback over it. Users are happy about having a time saving. They've praised it being easy. Everything online has been a hit. And then this year we've rolled out BAS additionally for the block boundary suggestion project. And we will be providing it for the school district review program later this summer. And then looking forward into the future, you can see 2027 through 2030, we are introducing several new program interfaces into GUPS Web, including LUCA, PSAP, new construction program, and BVP. That's the boundary validation project. Okay, now I'm going to show you the demonstration. All right. So GUPS Web you sign on through this page. So once you've registered, you will log in here. And the page that we're looking at now is the dashboard for GUPS Web. So this is what all users will see once they log in. I am a super user, so I'm seeing a little bit more than what a normal participant would see. But first, on the right-hand side, we have our list of recent projects. So whatever project the user had opened recently, or any time in the past will show up on this right-hand list. Right now, I can see all the existing projects in GUPS Web. And then on the left-hand side is our map management window. This is where a user will go to open up a new project. And I will do that in just a second after I finish the dashboard review. At the top here, you can see a banner. So these are notifications that the programs can make to remind users of any deadlines. Like you see here, we have the final BAS deadline approaching at the end of May. So that's just a good reminder for anyone in GUPS Web who is currently working on a BAS project to submit before May 31st. We have user management up here. This is where a project owner can invite collaborators to their projects. So you can go to invite users and invite your colleagues to work and collaborate on a project with you. And then you can check out the notifications again up there. On the left-hand side here, we have our general navigation menu. So at the bottom, you can return to the dashboard by clicking on this button. And then a very important feature for users is our help center. So that can always be found on the left-hand navigation menu. And it opens up our user guides. So there are general information about how to use GUPS Web, and then we have program area specific support. So if you are creating a submission for BAS, you can navigate here and it will give you a step-by-step instruction for how to submit for BAS. But I'm going to show you probably 90% of that in this demo today. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our demonstration. I'll also shout out before I forget that I've done this demonstration in more detail for the Boundary and Annexation Survey webinar. You can find that on YouTube by just searching for 2026 BAS webinar census. And it's like the last 45 minutes of that recording. So if you don't get your questions answered today, or if I didn't cover something, that's always a good reference as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up a project. We'll start with looking at an automated change creation project. So that's the case where I have my own local data. So select the program that you want to create a project for, the boundary and annexation survey, and then you would enter your government ID or your government name. You get the government ID, it's included in all the BAS materials for a participant, so it's pretty easy for them to find. And then you will select the project ID, and that is automatically generated with your email. All right, so when this window opens, or when this view opens, it will zoom out to the extent of your geography. So right now we're looking at an incorporated place being Corvallis City. Looking at GUPS Web as a big picture, you can see here that it looks like a general familiar GIS. So like any web mapping application, we designed it to be user-friendly and kind of familiar. So we have our ever-present navigation menu bar on the left-hand side. You can see that now that we have the top icons are activated. In the quick tools, we have your general navigation tools being pan, zoom last, zoom next. We haven't zoomed yet. You can just use your mouse to scroll in and out, but we also have general zoom tools. You can add imagery with one click and remove it. And then we have our save and refresh button located here as well. We have our tool options. So these are a little bit more in-depth navigation tools and reference tools. So you have, again, the pan map. You can identify features, the measure tool, and then more zoom tools. You can open your scale bar here. It just appears in the bottom right-hand corner. And then bookmarks, which are a handy tool either for your own reminder, if you had to like stop your work somewhere, if you had an especially large project, or as a reference for any colleagues who are collaborating with you on the project. You can leave bookmarks to bring certain areas to their attention. We have more imagery tools. So we do have the same imagery that was in that quick tools. And then we have Google Maps imagery and Bing Maps imagery. These will open up a new window with the same extent that you had in GUPS Web. So you can see different versions of imagery, which can be helpful sometimes. Sometimes there's like leaf on imagery, leaf off imagery, Bing, Google, and then the imagery that we have inside GUPS Web may look different, different periods of time. If you're looking at housing, it can be helpful. Standard selection tools, and our edit and review tools. I'll go over those in a second after I go over the rest of the general GUPS Web features. So here we have our layer legend. This is, again, your standard layer legend that you would be familiar with from other mapping applications. You can turn features on and off. Let me turn imagery off. So you can see here, I just turned on edges. You can see the streets, street names. You can also customize the properties inside this legend for each layer. So let's say I wanted to change the symbology of roads. I'm going to come here. I can change colors, thickness of the line. So it's really whatever your preference is, you are able to go in and change and save the symbology to your own preference. And then let me see if there's, okay, so here you can see we've got Oregon State University. That is an area landmark. Sometimes there's extra visual noise that you don't necessarily want on the map. You can turn those features off. All right, next we have our import and export tools. The import tool is import reference shapefile. So if you have a shapefile that you just want to use for reference, you can upload it here. For creating the changes, you would not upload here. So this is just purely reference, not for tool functionality. And then our export tools, we have submit to census. This is how you're going to submit your final product to the Census Bureau. So if you're familiar with, in the past, we've used SWIM. If you were using GUP's QGIS version, you would have to download the zip file from QGIS and then re-upload it into SWIM. The SWIM website to submit to the census from GUP's web, it's different. You can just directly submit to census. So there's no extra website that you have to sign in. There's no downloading, re-uploading. It's just direct from GUP's web. So that's a huge benefit to our partners and a huge time saver. But if you did want to download your project files for your own record keeping, you can do that here at Download Project Files. Okay, let's go back to tools. And this is where each partner program will have their own customized tools for their own programs. So the tools that you see for BAS are going to be different from the tools that you see for BBSP, BVP, Luca. And then if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our help center and you can see the step-by-step process for each specific program. So what you're looking at here for BAS will be different from other programs. Okay, so for this specific incorporated place, we are going to use the automated change creator. Once I select that, a pop-up appears confirming that I want to use the automated change method. I'll select that, and then it opens up this window here instructing me to import my local data. So we have incorporated place, and then there's more details here about whether you upload a zip or the components of your files. I'm going to upload components of the file and then select files. All right, at this point, I'm ready to select import. And then I have to select a data crosswalk. So this is where it's looking for a common field for it to match the census data and the local data to then create the changes. So I'm going to use, there's several options you can use. I'm going to use the name and legal description. And the field name can be different from census and local data, but the content of the field has to be identical. So it would have to say Corvallis City in the local data for it to run on the name LSAD. Okay, so then I'm selecting create boundary changes. It's letting me know that it might take some time to create them, depending on the file size. So we'll just wait for a few seconds here for it to run. All right, so it's popped up with an error message. Make sure correct geography, shapefile, and fields were selected. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's try uploading the file again. Okay, so it worked that time. Okay, so now, once it's created the changes, using it on an area here. Okay, so it takes a moment for them to render, but you can see like the new green areas here. These are the areas of difference between the census data and the local data. So just for reference, the kind of tannish yellow with the orange edge is the census data. After you've created the changes using the automated change creation tool, you're going to go to the boundary review tool and select which layer you're going to review. It will open up a table that shows each change that was created between local data and the census data. And at this point, the user will have to go through and review each changed polygon, enter any required information. So for BAS, anything that's a legal change, you are required to enter data for the effective date, authorization type, and the document number. Anything that's small, which is what we call a boundary correction. So those are areas where it's just small discrepancies between census and local data that just hasn't been updated yet over time. Those areas are caught by the automated change creation tool, and that's a good opportunity for local participants to update their boundaries with the census so that in the future, it'll just be minimal changes to review. Okay, so we'll go through a couple together, and then I'll show you the submission process. So you can double click on the boundary review table and it will highlight an area of change. So we can go ahead and turn on imagery for reference. We can go back and turn on our edges. And oh, real quick, because we've got a pretty big audience here and probably a range of geographic knowledge. When I'm saying edges, I'm just referring to anything like boundaries, roads, anything that appears as a linear feature within the map. So turning on the edges is helpful for reviewing boundary updates. Okay, so again, looking back at the boundary review table, we've highlighted this polygon here, and this is a large area that's being taken out of the census boundary for Corvallis. Since I'm playing the role of the participant, I know that this is going to be a de-annexation. So I'm going to add the legal information. Whenever I click that button, it opens up the add legal information window here. The required fields are the document number, the authorization type, and the effective date. So I'll fill those in. There is also the optional upload attachment. So if you have a copy of the ordinance or whatever legal document, you can upload it there. It's not required, but it is very helpful for our own records. Select confirm, and you can see that the data that I entered is now on the boundary review table. And then at this point, this is required for each change in the automated change review process. You have to either accept or dismiss the change. Accepting the change means that you are sending it on to the U.S. Census Bureau whenever we create that final product. And dismiss means that you don't want it to be sent to the Census Bureau. You are just kicking it to the side, and we'll probably be reminded of it again next year when you run your data. So this one, we know it's a de-annexation that we want to keep. Click accept, and it removes it from the table. Current view, if you want to go back and look at it, we have filters for the table. So you can go back and look at your accepted feature or your accepted changes, your dismissed changes, and changes not reviewed, which is the current view we have right now. You notice that dismissed changes has 143 features. That's because the automated change creation tool runs a check for exceptionally small changes, which we call slivers. Those are like small changes, usually less than like 15 or 10 feet at the widest width. Ones that are usually not worth the time to digitize. They're generally inconsequential to our programs, but you can always go back and check it and add them to the submission if you would like. Okay. But generally they can be ignored because they are so small. Okay, we're looking at a change here, looking at the next one. This is something I could go ahead and call a boundary correction, even though it is quite large. I am the local expert for Corvallis here, so I know that this is a boundary correction and not a legal change. So I'm going to hit accept. I don't have to add any justification for that. This is another very small change. I'll go ahead and show a measure tool. So we can look at it in feet. And then I'm measuring across. You can see it's 45 feet across. So it's a good size. And again, I know that it's a boundary correction. So I'll click accept. Okay. And then let's say for whatever reason, I know that this is not one that we want to submit to the census. I can select dismiss. And so on so forth. You go through each change, add legal documentation. If it's an annexation or de-annexation, simply click accept or dismiss. If it's not, and you go through until you're done with this whole table. And then once you've done that, you can go to import and export. And when you're ready to submit your final project to the census, you simply select submit to census. And since this is live in production, I'm not going to click that right now, but it will pop up with a window that says you've completed your submission and you're now done. Okay, so those are the automated changes. Now I will show you a manual change project. Oh, wrong project. Okay, so here we're looking at Athens City. This is also an incorporated place. And everything is the same here. But we are going to look at the modify area feature tool, which is what I've been referring to as the manual change tools. So once I select that for legal areas, it will confirm that I want to create boundary changes by drawing them on the map. And once I select that, it opens up this new window on the right-hand side. All right, so now I'm going to zoom into an area that I want to create a change for. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my imagery and edges for reference. And then now we can go back to the right-hand side and look at the modify area feature. So the first step is to select the geography that we're updating. So we're looking at incorporated place boundary updates here. Action, we're looking at an annexation here. Select the target area. So you can see it's highlighted Athens City after I clicked on the map. And then I will select draw polygon. And so then this is a pretty straightforward digitizing process where I'm just going to make left clicks on the map. Let's try tracing on the incorporated place. So I start with a left click and I can follow around here. And then a final click to complete my drawing. And it's highlighted the area that I digitized here. But we're not done yet because it is an annexation legal change. I have to enter the required fields in the table to the right. Whoops. That was a user error there. Sorry. Okay, let's try that again. That was absolutely user error. Okay, but we'll show this again. Okay. Okay. Entering the legal information again. And select commit. Okay, and now you can see it's filled in the area on the map with my annexation. And then let's go ahead and remove some area from the map or from the boundary. So again, incorporated place, boundary correction, remove area. Selecting Athens City, and then we can draw our polygon. Okay. And because this is a boundary correction, we don't have to add any legal documentation information. I can just select commit. And it will display the new boundary with the area that I removed. Okay. And so the user or participant will go through and add or remove areas as needed. You can see here why this would be a reasonable alternative to using paper maps. It's a little bit faster, saves you a trip to the post office, and you can be a little bit more accurate with the imagery and more detailed road information. All right, and since we've got time, I can go ahead and show you how to digitize edges. So depending on which program you're working with or partner program you're working on, you might need to add or modify linear features in the census data. Let me go ahead and make these features more visible again. Okay. Okay. I don't really have an area in imagery where I think there are roads missing here, but we can just make it up. Yeah. Okay. So also under tools, edit tools, you have the option to add linear feature. And whenever you select that, let me go ahead and close this window. Okay. Add linear feature. You can see it comes up with little crosshairs on the cursor, and you just simply can draw in your new linear feature, usually a road. And then whenever you finish your drawing, it will pop up with this attribute table where you will enter the type of edge it is. So here I'm putting a local neighborhood road. You can include the name, suffix. All right, and then I'll select commit, and it draws the new road onto the map here. You can also delete a road. So here I've selected it, it's highlighted. I'll right click and it removes the road. And you can also modify the feature. So here, if you need to modify the type of road it is or the name of the road, you can do that. All right, so once the user has drawn in all their updates, this is optional for manual changes. They can go in and review the changes that they created. So here you can see the two changes that I digitized, being the annexation and the boundary correction. You can zoom in on each one, update attributes as needed. And then, like I showed before, you go to export tools, submit to census, and you can submit directly to the census. All right, so that's everything that we have for the boundary and annexation survey specific tools. Just a reminder, if you want to know more about GUPS or see a more detailed step-by-step process for creating changes for the boundary and annexation survey, look up the 2026 BAS webinar. Over the next few years, we will get more support materials and step-by-step demos and written guides out on our website. And you will certainly be hearing more about GovsWeb. Okay. So that concludes the demo for GovsWeb and our presentation on geographic partner programs and associated applications. Thanks for spending the last hour or so with us.
That was great. Thanks so much, Maria, Mike, and Mike. We have a number of questions. We'll have a couple minutes to try to answer them. So I guess this one we'll try to go to Mike Arthur. How does one sign up for the various partner programs?
I'm going to field this one for Mike. Are you able to hear
Okay.
me, John?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. The Census Bureau will get in touch with you, but if you feel that you should have got an invitation to participate in a partnership program, you can either go to our website and specifically the Geographic Partnership Programs website. If you just go to Google and search Census Bureau Geographic Partnership Programs, it will take you to the right page, or you see the email on the screen, geo.outreach@census.gov. If you send us an email there, we can put you in touch with the right party in order to figure out what's going on. But generally, we reach out to about 40,000 tribal, state, and general purpose local governments, depending on which program is happening. But say it was the BASS program, they would send an invitation out to participate to those programs, and then you would follow up and go complete the annual response form or something like that. But usually we'll get in touch with you first. So if you feel that you should be participating in one and didn't hear about it, then just write us and we'll tell you how to get involved with it.
Yeah, that's great information. We had a question in the chat, which we answered, but yes, some states, we have state agreements, so that if you feel like you should have participated or didn't get this information, check with your state government, because in some circumstances, they answer for the whole of the state. Another question, does the partner portal incorporate requirements for the partner to sign non-disclosure agreement?
So I know specifically for the LUCA program, there's a number of forms that are associated with the program in order to protect the titled information that you're working with, and those forms can be signed and downloaded and submitted within the partner portal. So if you're participating in LUCA, that will be something to look forward to. That signing the forms and whatnot is going to be all taken care of in the partner portal. And I think we're going to learn more about that when our coworker Mo talks about LUCA in just a short while.
Yep, absolutely. Can you be part of several different entities, such as MPO/RTPO in the GDPP?
So I know even in the demo that I was showing, and I can either share my screen or just describe it, but you can be associated with multiple entities, and it's easy to just click a drop-down menu, and then you can switch between the entities that you're linked to.
Perfect, thank you.
Great question.
Maria, and I guess Mike as well, can you elaborate on the different use cases for GUPS versus GDPP? Like, where do they fit in the process?
Well, I guess the partner portal is really for, well, I guess it's easy to focus on GUPS first, and Maria, you can elaborate this, but GUPS is for making the geographic changes. It's an online GIS application, whereas the partner portal is for finding about information or submitting forms or looking at a schedule and kind of finding information about the entity or the government you represent, whereas GUPS Web is actually doing that technical work of taking your boundary and moving it from there to there or adding a new area. What do you think, Maria? Oh, and you might be on mute still.
Thank you. Okay, so a use case would be, for example, like you have Athens City, you would have the BASS contact for that city. They would receive a notification from the partner portal that BASS has started for 2027, and that they would log on to partner portal, fill out the annual response form, and indicate which participation method they would like to use to create their boundary corrections or boundary changes and submit them to the census. So from the partner portal, they can fill out the annual response form. They can view the current boundaries for their city. And then when they're ready to actually go in and make the change polygons, they would log into GUPS and create those changes and submit it. So you start at Partner Portal, indicate your intentions of participating in a partner program, and then you have all your reference material there, communication materials there, and then you get onto GUPS to actually make the geospatial changes themselves.
Great.
And
Yeah, that's a great, yeah.
one thing I'll add too is that both the Partner Portal and GUPS Web utilize the same login system. So if you have eventually down the line, if you have a Partner Portal account, you'll have a GUPS account and vice versa. And we eventually will have it so you can even go to your GUPS Web through the Partner Portal. So there's some good compatibility between the systems.
Wonderful. Are there eligibility restrictions such as citizenship to use GUPS Web and access Title 13 data on there?
In general, for GUPS Web, no. You just have to be indicated by whatever partner program you're working with. The Title 13, I'm not the expert on it. Maybe Mo could speak more to that after the next presentation, but no.
Okay, great. And how are these various systems dealing with 508 accessibility requirements?
I know for the Partner Portal, one of the people testing it is a 508 tester, and we're constantly striving to make sure that the Partner Portal is 508 compliant.
Wonderful.
Same with GUPS Web. We are designing it with the intention for it to be 508 compliant.
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I think that's the questions we had. Thanks again so much for the partnership team for talking about all the various projects and tools that we have available. Right now, we'll move on to a presentation about the local update of census addresses with Mo Salem. Mo Salem is a geographer in the address sourcing and policy branch of the Geography Division. He's a project manager for the Geography Division efforts as part of LUCA. Thanks for joining us, Mo.
Hi, thank you. Can you guys see my screen? Hello?
Yes, we can see your
Yes.
screen. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Mo Salem, and I am going to be talking about the 2030 local update of census address activity. This activity only occurs once every 10 years, so it's once a decade, and we are excited to do it for you guys this year. Next slide. All right, so the agenda is I'll talk about the overview. I'll do a quick overview of what LUCA is. Talk about participation in LUCA, what's new for 2030. Talk about a little bit about the Census Bureau address list maintenance that we do for maintaining our master address file. Discuss some important dates, how to prepare for LUCA, and then I'll go over some of the resources available for planning that some of my colleagues have already talked about, but I'll just reiterate. So the local census, local updated census address, whoops, and I am going the wrong way. Supports the Census Improvement Act, Public Law 103-430, and this authorizes the U.S. Census Bureau to provide the address list to officials of tribal, state, and local governments for review and comment before the 2030 census. So governments who agree to protect the confidentiality of our addresses will then receive an address list for their jurisdiction. This activity is only open to governmental units. So just academics and others probably would not be able to join into this endeavor unless they were nominated by the highest elected official or the LUCA liaison to take part in this LUCA. So that's just something to keep in mind, but it's really for governments to check our address list. When I say ours, I mean the Census Bureau's address list against their address list. Governments who do agree to protect confidentiality can then do a number of edits. They could add missing addresses, they can delete non-existing addresses, and then they can move addresses into the right location. Once that's done, we will process the data and then we will give feedback on those inputs. If the governmental unit decides that we made a mistake, they are allowed to appeal the results. That goes to the Office of Management and Budget, and they will have 60 days to take a look at that and decide whether or not to accept that appeal. So who exactly can participate in LUCA? Again, eligible governments include federally recognized tribal nations with a reservation and or off-reservation trust lands, states, counties, incorporated places such as cities, towns, villages, minor civil divisions such as townships and towns. And what's going to happen is later on when LUCA kicks off, I'll get to the dates a little bit later, but the highest elected official will get an invitation from LUCA and they would decide whether or not they want to take part, and then they would sign up through some of the tools that my colleagues talked about, the partner portal, to sign their forms and start electing people to work on LUCA. So as we look ahead to the 2030 census, it's important to understand just how central addresses are to the entire census process. Addresses form the foundation of every enumeration effort. They tell us where to send invitations, where to follow up, and ultimately where people live. Without an accurate and complete address list, we just won't have a reliable census. So addresses are super important to the Census Bureau. And that's where LUCA comes in. So while participation isn't required in LUCA, it certainly is beneficial to governments at all sorts of levels. LUCA is a key part of the Census Bureau's ongoing work to develop and maintain the census address list, and that's what's going to be used in 2030. So why is LUCA important, and why do we depend on governments to help us with LUCA? It's because they know their communities better than anybody else, right? They know where the new construction is, they know where the local changes are, they know where the street names change. So it's important that we get some feedback from LUCA participants so we understand what those changes are and we could update our database. Participating in LUCA, it supports the main goal of achieving a complete count. That's why we need to do it. If you give us your addresses, we will try to enumerate those addresses. Keep in mind, we're looking for residential addresses only. And finally, accurate census data, and Mike touched upon this in the earlier presentation, but there's trillions of dollars available in funding, and a lot of it is based on census data. And to get that census data to be accurate, you have to start with the addresses. And that's why, LUCA is something that people should think about doing if they have the resources to do it. And I'll get into that a little bit later on how maybe you can split resources with others. So, while this is voluntary, the benefits could be substantial. And by reviewing and updating local addresses, the governments help strengthen the 2030 census. They support their communities, and then they contribute to a more accurate and equitable distribution of resources across the country. So what's new for LUCA this time around? We came up with this strategy of coverage-based and data-driven approach. What does coverage-based mean? It's simply put, we're trying to determine if the Census Bureau has the correct number of addresses and if those addresses are in the right area or the blocks. And my colleague Kevin talked about blocks and geographies earlier. So basically everything we talked about before is coming together to show you how it works for LUCA here. And then the second part is this data-driven approach, and that's some of the tools that we've developed to help with the coverage-based strategy. And I'll get into some of these tools in a little bit, but they were talked about also. And why are we going this way? Basically, what we're trying to get people to do, or excuse me, governments to do this time around is we don't want people to spend too much time on Luca if they don't have to. And so what we're asking is that governments use some of the tools that we currently have published to even assess what the level of effort for Luca should be. So for example, those block count lists, those address count listing files that Suzanne and Kevin talked about earlier, we're asking participants or potential participants to create an address block count of their own based on their data, compared to the ones we publish. And then maybe if the coverage is there for each block, the governments don't have to do Luca this time. If the coverage isn't there, it helps focus the Luca review to those areas where there's large discrepancies. So again, we're just trying to make things smarter this time, streamline the process, make things more efficient, as my third point on the slide says. We're really trying to get everybody to have like a systematic approach to reviewing their address list. And then we want to maximize the value of Luca to both the participants and to the 2030 census. What else is new for Luca? I think we touched upon this a little bit earlier. We're only doing digital this time, so there's no paper. There are a number of reasons for that, but we have to go digital this time. We spoke about some of these tools, but we have an improved tool called that address matching service. I really like this tool. I wrote the requirements for this tool, so it's got a special place in my heart. But basically what we're trying to do with this tool, it goes back to this data-driven thing. We're trying to get you guys or the participants to go ahead and match the participant address list or the government address list to our address list. And think about it. If 80% of those records match, that only means there's only 20% that need actual review from the participant side. So, everything right now we're trying to do for Luca is about efficiency, about streamlining the process, making everybody's workload a little bit more manageable and easier to look at. Both Maria and Mike talked about these next two items. So the GUPS web item, the Geographic Update Partnership Software, it's a one-stop shop for Luca. It's going to be a complete GIS that has all the tools you need to run Luca this time around. And again, the Geography Division Partner Portal, the GDPP, you guys saw a demo of that. It's a secure portal for communication and registration for Luca. It's going to be great. And finally, what's new is we extended the review period from 4 months to 6 months. So we're trying to give everybody a little bit more time to do the review, make sure everything looks correct. With the tools that are available, we're hoping that's enough time for everybody to be able to do a good review of their residential addresses. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we maintain our address list. So other than Luca and the partnership programs that we discussed, there are a number of things that we do to update the address list. I think one of my colleagues touched upon some of these, but one of the main things we do is we receive data from the United States Postal Service. That happens twice a year. And we ingest data that way, and we get some changes from them that way. And that's one of the main drivers of how we keep the address list up to date. Obviously, the post office still doesn't have 100% coverage in the US, and that's where programs like Luca comes in. But, we get a good amount of data from them, and it's very helpful. Other things that we're currently doing are some AI and other types of analysis. So we've got automated change detection using moderate and high resolution imagery to identify change areas. And then we compare those change areas with some parcel data and some building footprints. And that gives us a good idea if there's a new structure there. And then there's some other analysis that goes in to make sure it's residential versus non-residential. And that's the use of, data science practices to automate and improve the accuracy of the address updates. And then finally, we do actually get eyes on these things to make sure that they're legit, and we QC things as they come in. So we try to maintain the MAF integrity or the master address file integrity through these automated processes. For important dates, so Luca kicks off, we're talking about it now, but it kicks off in about a year, in May of 2027. You can definitely start preparing now. You can start looking at some of the tools that we have and some of the data sets that are currently available. And I'll talk about that a little bit, but actual LUCA starts off in May of 2027, and that's what we're calling the LUCA prep phase. During this time frame, you could learn details about LUCA. You could set up the accounts, the GUPS account, the partner portal account. You can sign up for LUCA and register. You can start doing that block level address count comparison starting now, or because that data is available, or you could wait till the prep phase to do that. You could continue doing it into the prep phase. You can gather materials to review the address list once the review period opens. Now, this is very specific to GUPS. So in the prep phase, we are only opening up GUPS for Title 13 data, which is the address list data. The reason for that is we are trying to maintain controls on Title 13 data as much as possible, but that data will be the most current data at that point in time, and you will have full access to it to review in GUPS Web. What you cannot do during the prep phase, however, is actually give us a submission at that point. The prep phase is really training for GUPS and taking a look at the Title 13 in a controlled environment. So that's what we're looking for in May to August of 2027. In October of 2027 to March of 2028, that's where actual LUCA review kicks off. Similarly to the prep phase, you could sign up, you could create accounts, you could at this point choose either the GUPS account or you could do a digital download, which would allow you to take Title 13 data into your own GIS systems if you have an enterprise system in-house or however you want to review these data. You could do that during this phase. It doesn't have to be GUPS Web. It could be something in-house for you. And then you can still continue to conduct that block level research just to see if you want to do a full LUCA review. You'll have access to the matching tool through GUPS Web and through the digital download. And this is the point where you could actually do the adding of residential addresses, the deleting of addresses that no longer exist, and then the moving of addresses if the Census Bureau has it in the wrong place. We do have a firm deadline for this phase because we do have to process the data. So we're processing on the flow, but we need a hard stop at some point so we can start working on other materials for this next phase, which is the feedback and appeals phase. So that kicks off in March of 2029. At this point, like I mentioned earlier, the census will send anybody that participated and submitted records, we would send them a product with feedback codes on there to let participants know what we did with those records. So for example, let's say an entity added a record and we reviewed it. We came up with the notion that it's a business, for example. And, after we reviewed it, we send you feedback saying, we didn't accept your action because, we found that it was something non-residential. You would have the ability to appeal that if you so choose, or the participant. I keep saying you, but I mean the participants. And at that point, the participant would come back and say, yes, I would like to appeal this record, and that would be sent to the Office of Management and Budget. And a participant would have 60 days to do that within the time frame of receiving feedback. Then the Office of Management and Budget would make the final call on whether or not the Census Bureau would accept that record. And then finally, we have closeout in September of 2029. This phase marks the end of government's access to confidential LUCA materials. So the really good thing about GUPS Web is at that point, we would just turn the system off and it doesn't take much for a participant to have to control the Title 13 materials that way. If you've done a digital download, then it's more in depth. You actually have to destroy the data or delete it off your system, like complete wipe. It's Title 13, so there's only really limited access to what it's available for. Okay, how to prepare for LUCA. So again, I'm harping on this coverage-based approach. So starting now, a participant can create an address list, create their block counts from that address list, start comparing it to the currently published census address list. Later this summer, we are publishing these block count lists for each entity. So right now, I believe Kevin mentioned that they're statewide. Later on, they will be for entity by entity. So if you want only the block counts for your county, for example, we'll have a block count list available for that. So we're just trying to make it easier for these comparisons to happen. We really want people to, or I shouldn't say we want them to. We're suggesting strongly that they go in and take a look at their block counts and start developing a strategy on where to focus their review. Really important point is only residential living quarters should be included. Please, we cannot do anything with libraries or fire hydrants or businesses or mile markers. We've gotten that in the past and it just takes up resources. So we really need just residential this time. I'm going to go to the website later, but residential includes things like group quarters, so like dorms. It includes transitory locations, things like motels. So there's definitions on our website that you can get to help describe what residential means. And then some resources where you might be able to get your addresses from are building permits, the E911 address files, local utility records, annexation records, other files of that type. And the other thing that we would like is latitude and longitude are required this time around. You don't necessarily need to do it up front during your initial preparation, but prior to submission, we do require a lat long. Again, remember, the point of this is to be able to enumerate people, and we want to make sure we're able to find them, especially in areas that might not have, for example, city-style addresses, or the more rural areas, we would actually need a location, a lat long location. Other ways to prepare for LUCA, the website has a lot of good resources on there. I'm going to go to the website later, but it's a really good website with the most up-to-date information. Governments can actually make their data public now. There's a number of ways to do this. There's something called the National Address Database, the NAD, that's run by the Department of Transportation. By all means, if you have an address list, you can put it there. And for example, if you're a county that has countywide address data and there's a town in that county that doesn't have address data, that would help that town understand that they might not need to do LUCA because the address data is already there and maybe the county is going to participate. Other things, sharing parcel data. One of my previous slides, you saw that parcel data is used to automate some of the address creation or address maintenance. Please share your parcel data if you're able to. It's very helpful. And then there's other collaborations. You could work with other groups and other towns, your neighbors, your upper level entity. So for example, a county could work with the state perhaps. And then there's other resources that you could talk to, like, counties and states or the state data centers, regional planning agencies. There's a lot of people that are interested in LUCA. So there's, if you can try to find help that way. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about some of the tools that are going to help with the data-driven approach. And I'm just going to touch on this lightly. I know, like Kevin and Suzanne talked about these two tools and they did a great job. So just real quick, we're hoping that for LUCA specifically, these tools are used. Again, the address count listing file, especially the current one, that shows how many residential addresses are in a block for your entity. So again, it's updated twice a year. It's downloadable in I believe it's a TXT file, a text file. There's a viewer that has that same data in it. It shows, and they did a little demo, but it shows the data in a really nice way. And then we also have this data gem here, what we're calling a data gem, which is basically a video of how to use this. So there's some instruction on how to use it. With the geocoder, again, this has been around for a while. Kevin talked about this also. What we came up with was new Luca functionality specific for what we're trying to do with this data-driven approach. We've created a module there called the Luca module. In this module, you would be able to upload the address list, your address list, that is the participant address list or the government address list. It's got to be in a specific template, which is on the website. You would upload that, and then it would give you a block count list file. So again, we're just trying to get it very easy, or make it very easy to compare your address list with the Census Bureau's address list. Again, it's all about cutting down on workload for everybody at this point. And then once you do that, you could, put it in a GIS, or you could, put it in a table or Excel, and there's ways to compare them that way that I won't get into right now. And then the address count, the housing unit change viewer. Again, this is a really good tool. This shows changes, or what I like to say is this shows the maintenance for our address file within the Census Bureau between 2020 and the current benchmark, right? So it doesn't just show what's added and what's been deleted. It could also show what's changed, like just movement, right? So if, like, for example, if you look at this dark purple block, that means there's a large decrease in housing units there. There's any number of reasons for that. It could have been deleted for some reason. It could have been a fire or something, but more likely is that maybe the census had it in the wrong place and a maintenance operation came and moved it over to the correct block. And that's why you have a net negative here and a net positive in a different block, like the darker green blocks. So don't look at this as just, a plus or minus. This is also maintenance, basically, is what I'm getting at. And I believe that's my last slide. Before I get to the questions, though, I do want to go to the website real quick and just talk about the website, because I feel like it's a very good resource for people to use. There's a lot of stuff on here that I think participants could go in and take a look at. So, there's a lot of background information. A lot of this I just went over. But if you scroll all the way down, we do have the timeline, how to start preparing important dates. I'm trying to get to here. These resources you can use to get started or use to prepare. So the viewers I just spoke of, they're linked through here. The data gems, or those videos I talked about, are here. Here's the participant address list template. Again, it's really important that this is the template, or this is the format that's used, because basically all our applications or all our apps are using this template to do the processing that's going to make it easier for governments to do their Luca review. So very important piece of information here. Right now it's in an Excel format for just visually, it's easier to look at, but when you upload it, we probably need it more like we would need it in a pipe delimited format, whether it's .txt or a PSV file, but basically a pipe delimiter. We have the living quarters definitions here, so I touched upon that, but if you need to understand what living quarters are and the different types of living quarters, you can find that linked here. There's some guides here. The thing I've been harping on, how to compare block counts. There's a little guide here that explains how to do that. We link to the geocoder. We have a block count list user guide for the geocoder, just to explain kind of what the fields are upon output. We have a link to the Federal Register notice. And then we have some more supplemental data sets down here. We have Rome. We have a document called the Address Maintenance Strategy that goes a little bit into more depth on how we maintain the master address file. And this is something that's been coming up a lot, and I did want to point this out specifically. So we do have this participants viewer. So these are the Luca participants from 2020. You can click on this, it's great. And it just, you have to zoom in to see exactly who's participating, but you zoom in and it's got it by county, by state, by place, which is cities and towns. So it's a nice little viewer that shows you who exactly or what areas participated in 2020 Luca. And then we also have a list, which I previously downloaded, but you can get it from the website, of the actual respondents. So the Luca respondents list. So We don't give out too much personal information. We, at this point, are just giving out the entity name and kind of the liaisons department and their title. So, there's still a question of PII, personal information. We don't, we're still looking into whether or not we can give out actual contact information. But we feel like this gets people into the ballpark of who they could talk to if they want to collaborate on Luca with, the respondents that responded in 2020. All right, so that is the end of my presentation, and I'm sure I have some questions. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Mo. Yeah, that was really informative. One question we had, I think you might have gone over it a little bit just now, actually, but just in case that they didn't feel it was fully answered, who has the authority in regards to areas that are covered by multiple government units, such as a tribal government versus a county government?
So each government has authority over their own address list. So even if there's overlap, each government will get data set for their government. So there are cases where we would get or multiple records, duplicate records, I should say, would be sent out to two different entities, right? So if you're in a county and there's an overlapping government and the lines don't line up exactly, I know you said tribal, but think state and county, like both the state and the county could submit. The county would get a subset of the data that the state would have, but they would get it just for their county.
Great. Do we have any other questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat now. All right, thanks so much. We don't have any more. Thanks so much, Mo, for joining us. It's really informative for a very important thing that we do. So that concludes the GeoForum for today, day one. Please join us tomorrow. We have a lot of great sessions, including an open discussion with Census Bureau geographers on not only what we've talked about during these 2 days, but any questions you have for how we do our work, what we're doing in the future, as well as some really great presentations from some of our partner areas here at Census and for some outside presenters as well. So that should be really great. Once again, all of the presentations you have seen will be posted to the Census Academy. All of the videos will be posted to the Census Academy site, and the presentations will be posted as well if you're unable to see them right now. Thanks so much for joining us. And that's all we have for today. Thank you.